Good morning. This is Norma, and once more on a Wednesday morning for Norma Talks. Now it's the beginning of November, and so I have taken my usual picture of what it looks like is going to come up for North America for the month of November, which I'm going to put on my share screen now and bring it up. And so I looked at this. I don't really read them until I put them out. I take my photograph, I email it to myself, and sometimes over time I mess it up a bit, but this today is fairly easy. Now, one of the things here we'll notice, I just want to point out before I start, and this is what I call the inverted pyramid reading. Look at all the wands. A lot of wand symbology. That's thinking. For me, that's thinking. That's a lot of mental activity. But we're going to go through and we'll take a look at this. So what it shows off, and we're already at the 3rd already of the month. Halloween is past us. And there's coming up as Remembrance Day on the 11th, which next week I'll address that. But in the meantime, when we look at here in the beginning, we start off with this. To me, this symbol means that victory is assured. You're heading in the right direction. So I want to point out something here. This first 4 are all about change. Then we've got confusion over here. So this whole top line, even though the cups are all sitting on the ground, nothing too much else is grounded. One little sword here in the 10 of swords, one, other than that, really, it's all up in the air. So let's take a look here. And what I'm really seeing is from now until probably a good 12th of the month, it's going to be change, different things being changed on us. They may like have an idea, this is the direction we're going in, but actually it's turning away from a lot of things that we've taken for granted. This is this 9 of Cups here. 8 of Cups. A lot of things we've taken for granted. We're moving into an unknown quantity. And that's what I see kind of in the coming up, is that we're going to be a little bit at 6s and 7s as to exactly what's happening or what's going on. And that can be a good thing because all of this is leading in a direction. And it's the unknowingness. And like, I think if we know what we have to deal with, if we have facts and figures of an absolute truth, not some of the other stuff that we get, but it's like what we're seeing here is a very unsettled time because it's not grounded. And even when we come towards getting towards the middle of the month, so let's say 8th, 9th, maybe even 10th, this is always to me as an ending. And where does my eye go? It goes into this new beginning over here. But I just feel that it's kind of like a sense of, well, that's done. Whatever it is done. But it leaves confusion, more confusion. And so again, nothing much here is really touching the earth except this, what we're leaving behind. So everything is very, very much up in the air. Now, when we leaving the middle of the month, probably maybe around a little bit more than a month, because I'm getting probably even 12th to the 15th, even, and the dates are not real clear, which tells me that usually I'm fairly clear on my dates. And so what it tells me, it's muddled and it's going to take time for it to sort of sort itself out. But what I really see in this lower part here is the 2 attitudes on the either side of the 9 of Wands here. The King of Cups to me because Cups to me are emotionality, and it's like rising above the emotions. So everyone's just trying to carry on no matter what. But then 9 of the Wands people get very upset or very stuck or very set. And then they've got new things to think about. And that's what I see here coming up. And then really not until the very end of November. I just think this is going to be an unusual month. Everything up in the air. You might think this is going to work. Then it'll be something else that'll come in and something else comes in. And then even at the end here in the Page of Wands, we're trying to sort things out. But then what do we have at the bottom? The Hierophant. The Hierophant is knowledge, but dispensing knowledge. So from above, it's like, now this is how it's going to be. Whether we accept this is how it's going to be or not, because we obviously this is going to carry into December, no matter what, because this is not completed. It says it will be completed. It will get there. Everything is out there in the future. For once, I'm not clear on my dates at all. All I know is everything is up in the air. Everything is changing. And even if we start looking at things in a different way, if I just take the keys, which is victory, victory is assured. I always love this victory sign up here. But it's unsettled. Because we're going, we don't know. And what do we do when we set off with a new project or a new awareness? Is we're always optimistic. And then we have to deal with the emotionality of it. And it says, hey, you need more knowledge. You haven't got all the knowledge you need yet. So you can't make an absolute decision. And even on this, on the right-hand side, confusion that you'd think about. And again, not really clear on anything. Middle row says the same thing. We do not know what's going. So don't get stuck. Don't go saying this is how it's going to be, because it's probably all going to just come up and erupt in our faces anyway. You only have one higher arcana card, which is the learning element, and that's where you need more knowledge, because there's the teacher teaching us down here at the bottom. So it doesn't mean we have the knowledge, it means we need more, because everything is so confusing. As I said, lots of wands, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 symbols out of 9, saying think. Use your head. You don't know. Things are in action. Things are in action and movement, but it's not clear. That's where the issue is. Couple of 1 symbols and 9 and the king. And again, 9 is this comes to me is the feelings and emotions. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about that in a minute. And it's again change. Everything's changed. Swords are problems. Again, we have, problems supposedly coming to an end, but they're not really, because we're in the middle. And where are we heading into newness that we don't know or understand? So my take on this wonderful month of November is hold your hat. Know that November will pass, that December's coming. And it'll be interesting to see what December actually brings, because I don't think there's anything conclusive in this month. I think that we're going to go from highs to lows to ins and outs, you might say. I think we'll get news that will be changed probably 3 days later. Just very unsettled, because everything is up in the air. Nothing has been concrete. It's not in concrete. Whatever's going on, it's not in concrete. It's all very malleable. Is that the word? Changing. So I'm going to stop the share here. This is it. And I'm going to start talking about grounding a little bit. Okay, I'm going to stop that and go back to me. There I am. Now, I just love the synchronicity that happens at times. I happen to have several new clients come in wanting just half-hour readings. And I often find this will happen from different parts of North America, come in and just want these little readings. Remember, I do a lot of transformation work, really. So to me, little half-hour readings are just, oh, great. We go in, take a look, and answer the questions and give them something to work with. It was really interesting that I ran into people who have all sorts of ideas and concepts, but they weren't grounded. Now, the key of grounding is that you can manifest into the earth. Now, let's think about the earth. The earth is earth. It's grounded there in the earth. Air, which very often deals with more of the mental, is up here. And very often we get all up here in our head with all these ideas and values and awarenesses. Now, how do we ground that into world to make it practical for you? How do we take that and make that workable? And very often I know I need to work with people to have them become aware of the steps that they need to do to be able to manifest what they've got all in here. And often the issue is letting go of a concept that they have, it doesn't bring them what they want. You know, it's like, there's a saying, you can bang your head against a wall, and until you stop, you don't realize that you're banging your head against the wall. And that's what I find very often we do. We use the same processes over and over again in order to create. And yet within that creation, nothing is happening. And so we just go back and we repeat the pattern. We repeat the thought. We don't look for something new and different. The good news is that very often that's people who end up with me. I was going to say at my door, but modern technology now, it's not quite that. But it's like understanding that things need to manifest in a grounded physical way if you want to make any kind of changes. Yes, we need philosophy. And even that, I find people have philosophy and we start talking about what their philosophy of life is. And it's very up in the air and very airy-fairy often, and doesn't have that being able to bring into manifesting the rewards or the feeling that you really are wanting. When you want something, whether it be a material thing, a feeling thing, a spiritual thing, you really need to be able to embrace it in you. To manifest an object, what do? Let's just say you want to get a new television. What do? You check out the TVs and you decide, and then you go and you purchase it and you bring it home and you put it together and you sit down and enjoy it. At least we believe that. But very often people will make it complicated. It's like I think we tend to know what we want, but people will tend to make that complicated. Now that's a physical object and usually fairly easy to figure out how to acquire it and how you're going to pay for it. That's part of it too. Now, what if it's a concept about how to create your reality? How many of us create our realities? Probably more than we realized. What we do is we are responding to what is happening to us, and then we respond. We don't actually create. And that's what I find. We have this concept, especially for those of us that are into metaphysics and self-growth, is that we create our reality. I had to really think about this one time, and I got thinking about it, and I realized that the majority of what I create was as a reaction of what was already happening. So I was responding to a circumstance and going from that. And then I had to take a look at, well, if I want to create something from scratch kind of thing, how am I doing that? How do I do that? And the one thing is to be very clear about what you want. And that's another thing I find. People get caught up in a way, an emotional element that they're not always very clear as to what exactly they're wanting in relation. It's kind of like this month's reading, all up in the air, lots of ideas. It looks like this is going to work, but maybe that's not going to work. And what happens? But when we have a circumstance happen, we then have to figure out our response. So for people who've had readings know, I always say there's 3 ways we create: how we think, how we feel, and how we respond. The majority of our creation is through responding. Something happens we don't like, we respond to it. Hopefully, we always hope that we respond that in a very effective way so that you go on and you're happy with the end result. But sometimes that's not true. Sometimes it's not effective because the philosophical viewpoint will get in there and mess things up at times, not all the time, but often. So one of the things I'm going to suggest is in this very unsettled time, because it is an unsettled time, is to take a look and see what are your main priorities for you, your family, people you care about. Because what I find a lot is we get very concerned about what other people say, especially family. I've had a couple of calls this week where people are upset because their family has said this, that, or the other, or they want a person to do this or to be that. I even had somebody say to me, I have a lot of pride. And I went, do you want the result you want or do you not? If you want the result you want, you might have to set that aside for this. What is pride? What is that? How does that really work? We have pride in ourselves, but if we have, to me, that's a stubborn hanging on to the desire to be right. Do we need to be right? Or do we want to have it as we have it, as we achieve it, as we create it? There are so many ways in which we can block ourselves from being happy with what's going on. Right now, I've had friends phone, I've had friends come and actually stop by and even see me and talk about what they are afraid of at this particular point in time. To the point I had to sit down and think about, what is this? Because it's very easy to get caught up in fear talk and the maybes, like, what if this happens? And maybe this will happen, and perhaps that'll happen. And then I just sat to myself, said, oh, this is, I'm really happy to have all this information, but I'm quite happy just to see and be where I am in my life. And if something changes, then I will deal with that then. You cannot deal with something that's a supposition or a maybe. You can be aware of the dangers of that, but in you can decide to be more active or to become involved. Yes, that's a decision. But it's like, until you know the facts that are going to affect you in a certain way, to go to fear, like, oh, what am I going to do, and panic, because most of us have lived our lives pretty much similarly, same thing. We work, we have a family, we make decisions, and we've been able to have a lot of freedom. And now there's a lot of freedom for many. So it's like, how does that work? But the key here is that if you want to create, I don't want to get myself sidetracked a bit here because I can do that. If you want to create something, you've got to make sure that it can work into the material world. And that requires a thought, yes, but it also requires action. What are you going to do about it? How are you going to put that out? What are you going to create? How are you going to create that? And you must be committed to it. It's not a matter of, oh, that's a nice idea, I'll let somebody else do that. I think the commitment is also an important fact. But it's like, if we're running by just emotion, often we just move into reaction. If we're moving in the direction that we want to go in, we usually can see what we can do. Because it's like, you have this idea. And like, I get a lot of people phoning me up for consultations because they're wanting a new business and how to get that off the ground and things like that. And it's like, there has to be an element of practicality. Our value, our philosophy can be wonderful, but if it's up here and not down there, it's got to be able to transcend from here to there. This is where your value, this is where your belief systems come into your worthiness of receiving what you want or achieving what you want, whatever it may be, is to be able to get that. Very often your own belief systems are shortchanging you consistently. And it's very important to have those belief systems working effectively. And sometimes it's amount of language. Sometimes when I'm talking to somebody, and all of a sudden I'll literally stop them and say, if you just heard what you said, let's reframe that and say it this way, just so they can see the difference between saying it the way they would normally say it and saying it in a different way, because we don't claim, very often we don't claim what we want. We're not grounded. We don't claim it. We just know that it's all a lot of vision and in all sorts of awarenesses and ways. So I just want you to be aware that you, in this coming, and I'm going to go back to this month. And I'm sorry, I got distracted. There's someone trying to phone me in and is making a noise in the background. Even though my phone is turned off, my other one is making a little sound of my iPad saying, "You're wanted." Oh, good. Stop. It's my, not, one time I would never be distracted by that, but I was distracted and I apologize. So let's think about this. The reading for November is very unsettled. That could be a good thing. Unsettlement just means things are not rigid, and we know a lot seems to be rigid right now. So it's like, where is this really heading? Where is this really going? We don't know. We don't really know. And I want to say it may settle down towards the end of the month, but the majority of it looks. But take a look at your own life. Are you aware of how to create? Are you getting what you want? Are things changing? Because you cannot have all this fluctuation going on in the world, which I won't get political about that, but, you know, thousands all of a sudden don't have a job. They had a job nicely a year ago. How do they recreate that? How do they go and recreate the security that they've had? How do you put things in a perspective? How do you make sure that your life carries on? Because if you relate into fear, that doesn't usually happen. Being open and looking at alternatives. A lot of it is knowing how to ask the universe for what you want. And what's another thing I probably in my rambling today has not really said. You must know how to ask for the universe to give you what you want. Part of that is being grounded. Part of that is making it work into the practical world. But there's a key of knowing how to ask. And that is, first, you must believe there is a power out there that works for you. And secondly, you need to be very clear of the end result you want, and then looking at whatever steps you have to take. And you need one step, changing things, one step at a time. That's all it takes. So I want to thank you for today. I look forward to my Sunday talk, my little Sunday thought that comes along. I also want to thank you for that is subscribing. I really, really feel great. And I know I'm going to have time to go and answer the comments that you've made in the next couple of days. So I want to thank you. I want to thank you for listening. I want to thank my gals that are in my waiting room that watch me put this on before we put it up on YouTube. Just have a great week. And I'm going to say, be very flexible. This is going to be a wonderful ride this month. You're going to need to be flexible. So bless you and thank you for that. Bye.